Camera 1 is rolling. Starting mic 1.
Test. Test.
We should be good now. Everything is on. Just going to pull up, because we're kind of doing this on the fly. Okay, it's November 13th, or it's December 13th.
Yep. Friday the 13th.
December 13th. And we're welcoming Patricia Lim, L.AC. She is passionate about her patients' health and well-being. Her primary goal as a healer is to help others find and achieve wellness fully. Certified in sports medicine, acupuncture, and pelvic floor dry needling. We're going to have to get into that one. And she also has a doctorate, oh my God, in Doctorate of Acupuncture and Chinese medicine degrees, alongside a certificate, that's long, in Medical Qigong from ACTCM at CIIS. Wow. Welcome, Patricia.
So my last name is actually Kim, K-I-M.
Patricia Kim. Okay. What did I say?
Lim.
Oh, my fault. Oh, my
okay.
Goodness. Patricia Lim. And what does L.AC...
Kim.
Oh, my God. It didn't...
Oh. L.A.C. is licensed acupuncturist.
DACM.
DACM is Doctor of Acupuncture and Chinese Medicine.
Okay. Amazing. Welcome. Welcome, Patricia.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for being here and kicking off this GitLit Presents podcast sponsored by Rack Savant. Yeah, the floor is yours. I know we have some things we wanted to talk about. Yeah, you got the mic.
What would you like me to start with? Just introduce myself a little, tell you what got me into Chinese medicine?
Yeah.
Or what made me become a healer?
Just from what I know about you, you've just lived so many lives
in
this life. I want to know more about your past work in film production.
Oh.
That's a wild
part. What would you like to know about that?
I want to start with it.
Yeah, I mean, most of the work that I did in terms of entertainment industry was working at Viacom, at MTV and VH1, just freelancing. I did that for a couple of years, and then with those connections, I did a little bit of kind of side work with film production, different small films, a couple being documentaries, and then another being just like a short film, fictional. And then I kind of helped with makeup artistry as well on set. And I just did whatever, and I kind of helped, mostly it was production assistant work. So helping with getting the set ready, helping with transcribing the dialogue, the interviews. So there was some, it was kind of grunt work, some of it, but it was interesting. It was fun to have that experience. And I did a lot of other little side things in New York, like volunteering for auditions for Project Runway.
Nice.
Interesting, right?
Wow.
I was obsessed with Project Runway, and I got to see Tim Gunn in person. I was like, make it work. And I was like, make it work, people, make it work. I loved it. It yeah, I was really, kind of, like you said, I did a lot of things, and in New York, I explored a lot of different hats, I worked a different job every week for 6 months when I first went there, and then I found myself getting into the entertainment industry, and I was able to do some of that film stuff. So it wasn't too extensive. It was just like kind of getting my feet wet in that to see if it's something that I was good at or that I wanted to explore, because I was really just getting a taste of what it was like to live in New York City at that time, because I am from there originally. Like I told you before, I was born in the Bronx, but I went back there as an adult, and I was there for 6 years, and I worked in a lot of different industries, film being one of them, and it was a really amazing learning experience, and that was a big part of my journey, why I became a healer too. I went into, and that's something, if you want to transition into, I could tell you a little bit about the story of how I went from all of that world of New York City, and it was pretty intense, because in New York, if you don't know yourself and you're not focused and driven and the cream of the crop, then you're just gonna get thrown under the subway. And it's like, good luck, because that's what happened to me, and I am grateful to say that I survived it, because I really thought at a lot of moments I was like, whew, I don't know if I'm going to survive New York City. I was like, I felt, yeah, it was an intense joyride, adventure, not necessarily joyful, but but anyway, so I found myself really kind of in a way forced to see myself and really stop and really see that I was very lost. And so I went on a big search I had to, and I hit rock bottom majorly at that time. And honestly, that was the biggest blessing of my life, to be in one of the lowest places of my life, I have to say. Sorry, go ahead.
What's rock bottom? Like,
rock bottom is a term basically when your life takes you into the dirt. Like you hit the lowest point in your life. You hit a point where it's like you can't fall any further down. When it's pretty bad. You're in a pretty bad place. And physically, emotionally, spiritually, all of these things very much were very much showing me, please pay attention to me, that there's definitely something wrong. And I was very not well, and I had to leave New York City, and I discovered a meditation practice called MAUM meditation, and that's something that I wanted to talk about. It's a Korean meditation developed by a Korean monk named Woo. Is this okay if I talk about this a little bit?
Oh, you can talk about whatever you want. I didn't know that was on the roster, but I'm excited to learn. How do you spell that?
MAUM is MAUM. MAUM means mind in Korean. I'm Korean American. And so it resonated with me because I felt that it was interesting to explore my roots that way, to connect with a form of meditation that comes from my motherland, I guess you could say. And so I felt like, okay, well, maybe this is something that I could explore and be open to trying. And so it was in the middle of Koreatown, Manhattan, and I went there and I basically lived there for 2 weeks, and I meditated from 9 a.m. till 9 p.m. every night. And it was a method of subtraction. So it was this concept of they would draw this 2 circles, one being a symbol of the human mind, and then the second being a circle being empty, being the universe mind. So it was like a visual representation of the human mind being full of all these things, these images, these pictures, these concepts of who we are, what we've sort of stored in our minds up until, from the day we were born till today. So when you think about it, the subconscious gets programmed from 0 to 14 years old. And so everything gets stored in our mind, in our brain, in our consciousness, our subconsciousness. There's all these levels of consciousness and awareness, right? And so anyway, so this is something that was really fascinating to me at that time, but I was so desperate for help. So I was really, really on, looking for help. I was suffering on all levels. I had a lot of pain. I could barely walk through the subway without feeling like I was being suffocated. And my feet hurt so much. I felt like they weighed like 100 pounds, my legs. I could barely walk sometimes. And everything, anytime someone spoke to me, I'd be like, oh, my ears, like so painful. And I was just like, I'm falling apart. It was devastating to have your body become like that. And so I went and I did this, and it just was exactly what I needed. It was as though my whole life was being completely transformed from the deepest part of who I was, and it was this total, transformation, like a cleansing. And so I would sit for hours, and the helper would sit in the room, and they would say, oh, from 0 to 10 years old, any thoughts, images coming up gets sucked into this black hole. So you're looking at a black circle on the wall, and everything would get sucked into there and would disappear, as though it's a real black hole in outer space. And so you would imagine yourself before you start that you're dying, and your spirit rises up into the outer space in front of this black hole, and the Big Dipper is behind you. And this would be the start of every meditation, of every session that you do it for. And she would guide through each decade of your life, and everything gets sucked into this black hole. And so it was a method of cutting all the things, the good and the bad, everything. It's being disconnected. You're being disconnected from it. It's not that it gets erased, right? You can't erase it, but the energetic connection was being severed, because it's getting released, and it's getting pretty much destroyed into that black hole, because whatever goes into a black hole, defies time and matter and everything, right? Space and matter, and it just gets sucked up in there. And so I felt every time I did it, like every day, I felt lighter and lighter, and it was really hard. But then towards the end, I felt like I didn't need any sleep. I felt like I was starting to feel like very light and just so clear. And at the end, I had this revelation that I was the universe mind, and my mind was completely cleared. And so I left there feeling like a very different person. I walked into the subway, and I felt like I was floating through the subway, like levitating, and I had no more pain. I left the relationship that I was in, and I felt no pain. It was as though no emotion, no attachment. There was no more connection with the things, everything. It was weird, really strange. And I felt as though like nothing bothered me. Nothing. It was crazy. So that's when my whole life changed. I was like, what am I going to do with this? Like, I'm not that person anymore. And everything that I knew about life and who I was and what I wanted has completely changed. And now, what do I do with this experience? And I was like, I really want to be able to help people the way that I was helped. Maybe it's like, oh, do I become a monk? Do I, And then I was like, no. I did a lot of exploration, and I was like, Chinese medicine. I felt that was calling me. I started reading about Qigong meditation and all of that, and I was like, this is something that I really feel, is calling me. And so I decided to do this. So and I went for it, and now I'm here.
What gets sucked into the black hole? Everything or just the negative?
Everything from all the things, the people, the experiences, the good, the bad, the joyful, the worst experiences, the happiest moments, the challenges that you had, the friends, the family, the everything. It's this concept of being completely detached in a way, like clearing anything, the thoughts, the images, the lives, the people, the everything that you've been exposed to in your whole life. It's really intense. And in a way, it's like, because when you think about it from a spiritual perspective, the good things can also be our suffering. Because when you think about it, it can be. If you listen to Thich Nhat Hanh, he talks a lot about that, this idea of, we think that, life should feel good all the time if we are spiritual, if we are enlightened, or if we are, good people and we are living the right kind of life, we're living a good life, then we should feel good, right? And the idea is that the law of impermanence is undeniable. Things are always changing, and life takes us on a journey. And how do we go with that journey without resisting it, without trying to fight it, without trying to do something with every moment that arises? And that's my journey now. I mean, that's where I come from, this MAUM meditation, but this idea that, and that's what I was confused by too when you asked that question, like, what about the good things? Why do you want to detach from the good things? Because everything, whether it's good and bad, it's still attachment. So if we are attached to something that's good and that good thing goes away, well, how do we feel? We don't feel good anymore, right? So if we are constantly always looking for good things only, that's also an attachment. So it's like, how do we find that middle path of just being without bad, without this need for the bad? Because some people need bad things, like the drama, to keep them feeling good, the adrenaline, right? Which is like jumping off a cliff, like, oh, that's scary, right? It's not necessarily good to do that, right? Or, I don't know, I can think of other analogies, but you know what I'm saying? Like this idea of like, how can we see that whatever it is that our desire is, where is that going? And what is it is that really going to give us what we want? And this idea of these things, like, when you talk about hoarding, it's the same thing. It's like, why is it that we have to have these objects in our life? Whatever it is that we are keeping in our personal space, right? Because our space is our energy. It's our force field. It's the everything, right? The space around us and the space inside of us. And it's the same thing, because if you think about it, the consciousness, the greater consciousness is all of us together as one. And this concept of oneness, right, is really, you cannot put it into words. And I've been following Rupert's teachings, Gangaji's teachings, Thich Nhat Hanh, Eckhart Tolle, Michael Singer, all of these, Ram Dass, all these teachers that are so enlightened. And yet it's so difficult to be able to put into words what it is that we really are at the core of who we are. And when I did that MAUM meditation, I was nothing. Tiffany, nothing. And I am nothing. And that the idea is that it's not even nothing. That's what Rupert says. It's not a nothing. Because God is not, and it's not even God. Some people say, oh, God, you know, and they're like, oh, I don't want to listen to that, right? Because it's like there's this kind of stigma around the word God, right? It's like religious, and like people are like, oh, I'm not religious, right? It's like, oh, well, maybe I'm spiritual. And it's so funny because people talk about spirituality and they're like, what do you mean by spiritual? Some of my patients are like, what is spirituality, right? And I'm like, well, let me explain it to you. And they're like, I'm not religious. It's like immediately, you know? And I get it. And I don't want to go off on too many tangents, but to get back to this idea of the hoarding, there are many things and there's many reasons that each person has a disorder. But to get to the core of what it is, I feel that a lot of these disorders that we suffer from, anything that we suffer from, we have the power. Okay, some people might not if they have a major chemical disorder, right? It may be very difficult for them to choose their path. But we, as a healthy individual, we to whatever, how you define that, okay? Healthy being that we have cognitive function and we can make decisions for ourselves, right? And we're not like totally disabled, okay? So as a person that has the ability to make a choice for ourselves, that is the core. It is our responsibility to be able to look and see and be that awareness that it chooses. Do I need all these things? And why is it that I need them? And ask yourself, why? What is it that I really want in this life? And are these things giving it to me? Because if they were, then why do you need to have more? And that's the idea of the things that make you happy. You just keep wanting it. It never ends. You're never satisfied. And that's the idea, Tiffany, is that no matter what it is that you're suffering from, it's a need, it's a want, it's a that. I need to control. I need to have this. And it's never ending because that is the trap of the human mind. We can never, ever be free of that trap until we wake up and see the truth.
Okay, so that was, wow.
Sorry. It's a lot.
I
could talk for days about the things that I have experienced and how it relates to the concept of hoarding. Because when you think about it, everything from feng shui to the concept of yin and yang, to the 5 elements, to everything that Chinese medicine is about and comes from. Thousands of years of observation from, ancient wise sages and these really just profoundly gifted healers and scholars that really got who we are in the context of this cosmos. And what I'm trying to say is that when you look at it, when you really zoom out and look at the bigger picture of life and who we really are, and our role, our little role here, it actually isn't so little. Our role, each as a person in context with the whole universe, it is so mind-blowing, okay? And then when we think about it, where is our focus going? And how is it that how I'm thinking, how I'm living my life is in alignment with that? How is it that when I have all these things, is that really allowing for me to open myself up to the reality of this consciousness that we are? No, I'm sorry. And that's when I look at myself and I go home and I see a clutter and I see, oh, I need this, I need that. And I buy things and my whole closet is jammed full of stuff and I can't even get in there. And I'm like, oh, okay. Do I feel good right now? No. No, sir. And then I'm like, I just want to what my patient told me was just put everything on your bed and look at it. What do you want?
That sounds scary.
And I did that. I actually went home. I was treating my patient. She's like, try it. I went home, put all my clothes on my bed. It was like a giant 5-foot pile. And I'm like, all right, what am I going to do with that? I was like, nope, 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 nope. I just like threw it all in a pile, like, no. And then I was like, okay, Marie Kondo, tell me what to do. And she's like, oh, so you hold it. Does it give you joy? And if it doesn't, say thank you for what you did and put it. I'm like, I don't have time for that. I just put it in the pile. I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm like, I'm going to thank you all, okay, for everything you did. And I'm going to take you to the shop now to, and so this is, yeah. And and it felt so good to offload that. And it was sitting in my basement. And the mice came and like lived in it. I was like, oh, you know, and I felt the energy. You know what? I felt that energy sitting there. And I'm like, you know what? I have it there. And our minds are so, our hearts and our minds are so intensely powerful. Like we sense the energy, right? We still have that. It's still that black hole has not sucked it away. Okay. So I'm saying that SHIT stuff is sitting there with the mices SHIT. So it was like, you know, it was like this kind of like analogous, I can't even think of the words. It was just, it was ironic. It was ironic. Okay, so
did you did you purge your basement with the clothing and the rat feces after MAUM? The MAUM Korean?
Oh, yeah. I mean, MAUM was 2010, like 2011. Yeah.
What did you purge?
Purge was like a couple months ago.
Okay. Okay. So let's go back to 2010 and MAUM, if I'm saying it correctly. So the process of MAUM is you draw a circle, and then every day you visualize. But do you start from a childhood? Like
yeah, so you start from 0 to 10.
0 to 10. Okay.
When you're born till 10. So it's a 10-year span of chunks of time that you're really kind of opening yourself up to allowing the images and thoughts and whatever it is that the helper would tell you to invoke. And so it would just be like, okay, imagine or try to, you know, bring up all the people from your friends from 0 to 10, or maybe not friends, but the people in your life from 0 to 10 that you recall that where you were being taken care of.
And you can just do as much as that comes to you, but you start at 0 because, I mean...
Right, because you can't remember. Your recall of the memory recall actually doesn't start till like maybe 6 years old or something like that. So for whatever comes up, and sometimes it's pictures, right, of that you saw as when you were a kid or an infant, right, your mother holding you, and even that stuff you can throw into the black hole. So it's everything and anything from that time.
Do you find that you get memory loss after?
No,
you still remember it.
Oh yes,
but there's a lightness because
there is a less of the coming up of these thoughts.
In a negative way?
No, in a freeing way. It's as though that those things are no longer in your conscious.
Where are they?
It's still in your subconscious, right? But it's not being brought up as much as easily into the conscious as it is. And I realized that the more I cleared out my conscious, the subconscious also was coming out. Things that I had buried for years that I forgot about. And I was like, oh, wow. And things that were coming out that I felt like, wow, I forgot. Those are really intense feelings that I'm having. And it was releasing that too.
So you're talking about the unconscious is where your thoughts or memories are safe and cozy. And then your subconscious is where things start to kind of bubble up, and then your conscious is when things get like maybe visceral.
Yes, I think that I cannot give you the scientific definition of unconscious, subconscious, and conscious. From my understanding, unconscious is more in the state of sleep, unconscious. We're actually sleeping, where minds are not active. We're in a sleep state. That's more the unconscious, I feel like. Subconscious is a little bit above that, where it's like you could get into hypnosis and they go into your subconscious. It's like you're still awake, but you're almost in between the sleep and the awake. So it's like in between the two. And there's different waves that the brain frequency also can get accessed through like sound therapy. I talked to you a lot about that. So there's different frequencies like theta wave, alpha, and things that can access different parts of our brain as well. So that's another topic. But in terms of the conscious is like, okay, we are conscious. We are awake. We feel it, right, in this moment or at certain times of the day. We're conscious of it because we're aware of it. But subconscious can be below the awareness level. So when you're watching a movie, it's actually getting fed, just like subliminal messages getting fed into the subconscious mind. We're not actually conscious that it is getting stored there, but it is part of our brain activity. Okay. And it's something that actually is what, from my understanding of it, is that it's programmed. Our conscious, the subconscious, is being programmed at a very young age.
So what is the unconscious, if we can define it here? So the subconscious can be programmed by our external world, but is the subconscious like our soul, or is it?
Yeah, it's hard to translate it. It's difficult.
Into something that maybe feels tangible, like for me, because what I'm visualizing is subconscious is like where the soul lies, and that's where, as you suck things into the black hole and cut those cords, there's still matter or energy, but it goes into like your subconscious, and then that allows room for the next layer maybe of the subconscious to bring up more things because you have more room. And then
it doesn't, when it gets sucked into the black hole, it doesn't come back to you. It's actually you're releasing that energy out, whether it's through thoughts, because thoughts are a form of energy, right?
Totally.
Emotions.
Yes.
So this is a Korean monk that developed this, okay? And it's very fascinating, and it really worked for me. So it just really taught me the power of the mind-body connection. That's really what, like, I'm not an expert on unconscious, subconscious, and conscious to be able to break it down in a very scientific or analytical way. I'm not the person for you to do that. But all I can say is that what I know of it is that my experience was undeniable in terms of the mind-body spirit connection. Because when I did those steps, those methods, okay, I have never in my whole life, up until that point, right, decades of life lived without this awareness of who I was or who I could be. I suffered so much until that point. Remember all the things I was suffering? I suffered every day, and it was only getting worse and worse and worse. And the moment that I went through that experience, like, it was a rebirth. It was as though that old self was dying and this new self was being born again. Like this concept of being a born again Christian. I was like, that is exactly what is happening here, but on a level of, doing these meditations, right? And so it's the same idea of like reaching enlightenment, like the Buddha did, or Christ consciousness, right? Like Christ had this ability to have this complete awareness because he was a godly human, a god in human form, basically, just like the Buddha became that way, and through his methods of meditation. And so what I'm trying to say is that with these methods, this method that I went through, I was able to fully experience that which I truly am at its core. And so what I realized lately is a whole other experience, because I went on retreat in October to meet my teacher, Gangaji. And she's from a non-dual. I don't know if you want me to start talking about that now.
How is it connected to MAUM?
No, it's completely different.
Completely different.
So maybe we should finish the MAUM first before I move on to a whole other topic.
Yeah, we went into it. I mean, everything's connected, but it was interesting to hear like this concept of sucking everything into the black hole, good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
Similarly to how we treat our material things, like throwing all of your stuff onto the bed, and then you deciding that the way you're going to do it is just saying goodbye to everything, kind of like the way you would in the MAUM practice. But that was in 2010, and then a couple months ago you did this with your material things. So where does, and did I say correctly, Gangaji is another type of meditation?
No, she's a very spiritually enlightened being, woman, a guru.
Oh, okay, guru.
Yeah, and within it's called the Advaita Vedanta tradition. It's an Indian philosophy, and basically we call it non-dualism. And she went to India and found a teacher basically there that really brought her to full realization of her truth. And she found the most freedom and liberation through this experience of learning from this teacher, Papaji. And Papaji's teacher is Ramana Maharshi. And so it's a whole lineage of teachings. And she was appointed that name Gangaji because the Ganges River in India was a symbol of her bringing the teachings to the West. And so she brought it to the West and wrote all these books. And I started following her many years ago, and I finally got to meet her. And that's a whole other story I'd like to share when we get a chance. But I think that you have made a really interesting point about this idea of throwing away, because the concept of MAUM is throwing away the false of who I am so my true self can live. And that's the concept of MAUM meditation. And you would say that mantra every time you start the meditation. How can I die to the falsity of who I am?
How can I die
to the false of who I am?
To the false
of who I am. Who I think I am, basically.
Okay, one more time.
Okay, so in Korean it's 진짜 버려야 할 가짜인 나를 버리게 하는 방법에 감사합니다. So, basically you're saying sorry, I'm trying to remember. Basically, you're saying, how can I die to the false of who I am so my true self can fully live? I mean, that's my interpretation of it. And we would say it 3 times before we start the throwing away into the black hole. And that was the practice that I did for an intensive practice to complete level 1. There are different levels that you would complete in order to reach enlightenment, in a sense.
And that's the practice.
That's one level, and then there were 8 levels that you had to go through.
So are the other 8, we don't have to go into all of them?
No, I'm not going to go into all of them. But
is it more like physically bound? Or like it's longer, less food, no water? Like what happens in those other layers?
It's kind of scary.
Oh, did you reach all 8?
No, I only completed level 1. I started level 2, and then I couldn't continue with it for many reasons. Was it like silence, or did you have to mute? You had to imagine things getting killed.
Oh, I wonder what. Okay, yeah.
And I didn't like that. I didn't want to imagine things getting killed.
Well, it's great that the level 1 was good enough.
Yeah, it was enough for me.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful.
But I guess what I'm trying to say is that I think it's interesting that you say this throwing away, because that's the idea of the MAUM. And when you think about the mind-body connection, right? And the cravings that we have to want things.
Oh yeah.
And that's a craving, right? We crave, we desire.
What's a craving?
It comes to have things.
To have things, yes.
Yeah, to own things.
To consume,
to buy, to own, right? To possess.
Mm-hmm.
And to have in your space, right? Your physical space. And those things are, and you create an energetic connection when you buy something and you bring it into your space. It's like, this is mine. I own it, right? And then it becomes yours. And if someone takes that from you, like I just had my AirPods stolen from you, I think. I just bought them. It is so painful. Like, no, that is not okay. And it's almost like, then it made me realize the attachment is so powerful. And that's why it's like, throw it in the black hole, whenever it's like an analogy, right? Yes. How do I throw it in the black hole? And if we could throw everything in the black hole, we wouldn't need anything. That's why when I said, when I finished it, I felt like I didn't need anything. I needed absolutely nothing to feel okay and to feel at peace and to feel happy and to feel satisfied. All the things that we want. When we buy something, it's like, I bought this Apple computer because I need it for work and I need it for this and I need it to make me happy and I love it and if someone takes it from me, I'm going to be so angry. And that's natural. But the idea is that when I did the MAUM, it's like, I gotta throw the MacBook into the black hole, it's gonna disappear, and like all my stuff, right? And then it's like gone. It's that connection is gone. It's not that the thing is gone, it's the connection is gone. And then it's almost like, whoa, that is ultimate. It's like, oh, Tiffany, do you still want your, Patricia, do you still want your 5-foot pile of clothes? No, I don't want that. No. It's almost like the idea of like, this idea of like, okay, follow me. I will lead you, but you leave everything of your possessions behind. It's this idea of like, how do you really find salvation in getting rid of everything? And that is the true death. And that's what my teacher teaches me. How can you die before you die? And this idea of like every concept of what you want, what you need. And that's extreme. And not that you need to do that. It's not like you have to like, get rid of everything you own and, then you've reached enlightenment. No, I think the idea is this idea that you need something in order for you to be something. Because in reality, you are nothing. And that's my experience, was that if you actually ever get the opportunity in your lifetime to experience the nothingness of who we really are, the reality is that nothing matters. Nothing.
So I think people kind of there's a drop off when it's hard for people to grapple with that last part. And I think that's where the drop off is. So how most of us live in this reality where it's not that, let's say we've enlightened to a level and we don't need what we have, but I kind of need this phone to function in society. So that's the conundrum that most people can't wrap their head around. I can't wrap my head around because I could throw this phone into the black hole, like figuratively.
Yeah.
And then I guess that makes me like not care as much about like, if somebody stole it.
Yeah, it's this conception. It's an energetic connection to it. So how do we be free? How can we be free? Even though, we do technically need it to, get our job done and communicate and, live our life in the modern society that we live in. Yeah. Right? We don't live in a cave. We're not like Buddha or like Ramana that sat in the cave and we just did nothing but meditate all day, right? We're not renunciate lives. So we live in this world, but not be of it. To not be a slave to the things of this life. And that is the biggest challenge of a lifetime. And I'm not saying it's, oh yeah, everyone can do it. Everyone can. We have the capacity to do it. But how do we rise to that challenge is the ultimate challenge. And that's what that's of my interest now, is that meditation is not something you do to get something, because the reality is that you are already that which you are looking for. And that's the total revelation that Gangaji has opened me to realizing. And I know that's hard to understand for most people what that means, but it's not something that is an intellectual sort of mind understanding. It's a total life experience. So
okay, so Gangaji, born Tony Robertson, grew up in Mississippi. I'm just reading her bio.
Yeah.
How did you come across her?
So I was desperately on a search for a teacher, because after I did MAUM, I went to Chinese medicine school. I got all that information in my head. I was very stressed out all the time. Anyway, it was a very big, long, stressful journey to become licensed acupuncturist, Chinese medicine doctor. And then once I did that, then the whole stress of life and as I was going through that transition, I was very much looking for a teacher. And one of my patients that I had been treating regularly, he was like, you should really look into Gangaji. And I was like, okay. So I started following her, reading her books, listening to her podcasts, watching videos on YouTube, and I started attending her live meetings online. She would have live meetings some Sundays where you would have a silent meditation to start, and then she would open it up to Q&A or to be able to speak with her directly. And besides that experience of watching, it was a lot of her books that really resonated with me. And she was actually an acupuncturist in San Francisco a long time ago before she went to India and found her teacher. So I really thought that was interesting too. And she's exactly the same age as my mother, which I think is fascinating too, because I feel that she is this mother figure in my life, spiritual mother, and nourishing me in a way that I always wanted to be. And not that my mother didn't nourish me, but just in a different way, in a very deeply spiritually awakened way, and in a way that was very like this feeling of, wow, I really found my teacher, and just really felt connected to her. And then I had finally had the opportunity to meet her in person in October. And that's a whole other story I'd like to share with you.
Yeah, my mind immediately goes to the topic of mother wounds, but
yes,
if that's not what Gangaji is for you, we can table that. I know that we're talking about mother wounds in another podcast, unless you have something to say about it, because it's such a heavy topic here.
It is. It's intense. I mean, it's definitely a mother wound topic for sure. Because
if we could talk about that,
we could talk about that a little bit too, because I feel that that's something that everyone can benefit from.
Absolutely, mother wounds.
Mother wounds are
parental wounds. I think are just such a gateway into healing. Healing those, like you're done. You're good now.
Yes.
It really stems from our beloved parents.
Yes.
Or the lack of, or
yes.
Oof.
Our inner child, and that relationship with the parents, and and the way that I think in a lot of cases our parents, especially you and I, of being Asian descent and of having parents that are not of American upbringing, and so I feel that there's that generational and cultural gap, right? And then also the kind of lack of resources and education in comparison to what we have had the privilege to be exposed to and have access to now, right, with technology and everything, right? And I feel that that's something that it kind of runs across the board for a lot of Asian Americans, how we've had to really go through a lot with the new generations of being born here, of immigrants. My parents were baby boomers, and it's they didn't have any of that. And so when I think of like their life and their life experiences and it's lifetimes, I just feel like it's worlds away from what I experienced as a child, right? And so I think that makes it it's difficult for us to be able to bridge that gap and to be able to really find that place of connection with our parents, and specifically when we're talking about the mother-parent relationship, parent-child relationship. I think it's, I feel that I feel there needs to be a lot of compassion and understanding on our part now, as we're older, and our relationship with our parents is one of the most challenging relationships of our life. To be able to hold space for them, and to be able to almost become their parent as they age, and in a way, because you are able to potentially help them the way that they were not helped as their inner child. And so I think that that's something I really it's been really difficult, because a lot of it was about me trying to fend for myself, reverse the damage that was done by my parents, or my mother in particular, right? And no I know my moms might watch this, but so I felt, and I still feel it when I think about it, and I put myself in her shoes when she was, my age and younger, when she had me, and how much, what a struggle, and from her upbringing. I don't know what that was like, and all I can say is that it took, me a very long time to be able to not only heal myself, but to heal that relationship. Because really, when you heal yourself, you're healing the relationship. And because that relationship to yourself is the relationship with other, because it is a direct mirror put in front of you. When you are in relationship, especially with your mother, you are them and they are you, and there is no separation. And when they look at you, they see themselves, and they want you to be whole and complete. And a lot of times they want for you what they could not have. And it takes a lot of courage and strength and work, inner healing work, to be able to overcome the differences, number one, to be able to really open yourself up to the things that I'd never wanted to look at, because it was so painful. And that's why I left my mother, and I don't want her to watch this, but I felt that I needed space to be and to really find myself, and that's
Is your relationship better now? Do you have a relationship?
Yes.
Okay. When did you reincorporate back into
her life? it never was unincorporated, but I feel that the distance, in the physical distance, I felt that it was extremely painful for her that I left, went to the other side of the country. And it was devastating in a lot of ways because she did not want me to go. And I just said goodbye. I said, I need to do this for myself. And it was, anyway, it was that time of separation was, there was a lot of ups and downs, and every time I would come home, I felt very triggered, and I felt very afraid to come back home because there were so many unhealed wounds, right, from the past. And I realized that the more I did that healing work, the more that I could handle the interaction when I would come back, and the more that relationship naturally evolved on its own. And I felt that was absolutely necessary for me to be able to be in that kind of that time and space of not being so close to my mother physically. And I think that not everybody has the opportunity to do that, right? Some people have to take care of their parents and they depend on you. And that's where it gets extremely difficult, right? Because you cannot just walk away and be like, oh no, I'm not gonna participate in this relationship that isn't serving me right now. And that's where I feel that it's even more that we have to go inward and really, really face the most difficult parts of ourselves that we don't want to, and that is so hard to be able to do. And that's why it's like, in a way, it's like, it's really how you look at it, because you could be in that space where no, it doesn't feel good and it's really, really hard and I feel weighed down and it's so challenging. But it's like, it's these moments and these experiences are the greatest opportunity for us to be able to rise to those challenges and really love, and discover what is love. And that's a whole other topic that I would love to talk about someday. But in terms of the inner child work, I've been doing that. I've tried many different things, and I feel that all of those things can be helpful, and it is helpful. But it's not like it just goes away like that, like, oh, I'm so much better. But the threshold of what I can handle in terms of when I do meet my mother, I don't get triggered as much now. I feel that when I do, I'm able to handle it better. I'm able to feel that, oh, I'm not as afraid of, oh, I feel like I have to run away from it, or I feel that I have to like put up a wall to protect myself. I feel before I would go home, I got to put up the shields up, put them up, and like, no, don't let it get to me, and it was almost like this. I had to go into protective mode, like, it's like, and then it's like, okay, well, I can relax more, just relax into it. Just how can I just let it be and just be with it and just be the observer of it? And that's what Michael Singer talks about. How can we be the observer of life, be the awareness, instead of letting life live, like trying to control the life? How do we let life live through us? How do we allow for that relax and release? And that's what he talks about, like, just relax and release the things that you feel so uncomfortable with. And it's like being comfortable with the discomfort of life. And that's the big challenge, right?
It's perfect that MAUM, if I'm saying it correctly, is phonetically similar to mom. It just sounds like such a great practice for mother wounds, because like you said, some of us don't have the opportunity to have physical space from our parentals, but you know, you could go into the restroom stall, draw a dot, and spend like 2 minutes and just throw a bunch of stuff into the black hole and just like take a note of where you ended and then come back to it in a couple hours. You just got to throw as much as you can into that black hole.
Right.
I mean, I think that's going to be helpful. I'll give that a shot because I think that I've heard many times people have like left the country or left the state that their parents live, and well, when you go back to visit your mom, what's the span of time you can spend with her now? Like, is it like this fruitful, like week long? Like, are you guys like really like vibing now?
Yeah, it's interesting because, you know, she's going through tremendous grief. I think I told you my father passed away last year unexpectedly. And so that has really changed everything. If you can just imagine 50 years of marriage, you become that person, like that your identity is attached to that person.
Totally.
And it's interesting because I was having conversations. She was like, you know what? Because my dad was a pastor, and their life together was very much based on the spiritual life that they both lived in honor of. And so that really brought them, the bond, closer together. And my father that was his life, was the devotion to his serving the Lord. And so it was very fascinating because I just spoke to my mother recently about my father, and she said that, oh, you know, it was always something that I was sort of jealous of in a way, that he was so devoted to his spiritual life and serving, that it was taking away from the attention of me to me. But what she admitted to me was interesting. She was like, I have to admit that I loved your dad more than the Lord. And I said, oh, that's so interesting. Because it was so clear. She said that Appa, you know, Appa is daddy in Korean, we call him Appa. She's like, Appa loved Jesus much more than he loved me. And I said, I don't agree with that. It's not about more or less, you know. It's that he put that first, because that is the essential. That is the true guiding love. And that's what I'm realizing in my spiritual practice, that love is not about attachment. And when you attach to another person, that is actually not true love. True love is when you are both in service of this greater purpose in life, this awareness, this consciousness, this devotion to whatever it is that you are in alignment with, this consciousness, right? And then when you find someone else that is also in alignment in the same way, and you can share that journey together, I feel that's true love to me, like true love. And it doesn't have to be that, oh, you have, you know, this practice and that. It's not about that. It's about this awareness, because you know people say God is love, right? And it's like, oh, but God isn't a person, so how can God love? And this is a really interesting concept, because the love, when you look up the word love in the dictionary, it's interesting what it says, and it's not how we as, you know, spiritual conscious beings define the word love. So I think it's interesting to think about this. And when I get back to my mom and dad, I think it's really beautiful to see the transformation of her life, you know, as this kind of, as my father's human form has diminished and passed. You know, it's like waking up in your worst nightmare to see your parents die like that, and I had to watch him die. And so what I'm trying to say, to answer your question, is that relationship with my mother has significantly changed. because of that experience. But even before that, I feel that as I've reached places of inner peace where it's not disturbed by anything, not even my mother anymore. But there's still moments I was discovering before my dad passed where I would get angry at my mom and be like, no, I told you don't say that. I told you that really bothers me. And it was as though I needed to correct her in order to be okay. Like, no, I told you next time. And it was like, I'm telling you. It's like, you need to listen to me. It's like, I need to fix this in order to be okay. And it was still a thing.
An attachment.
Yeah, it's still an attachment. Like, I'm attached to you and how you treat me and how you see me, whether you approve of me or whether you're happy with me or whether, you think that whatever of me, or how you say things to me, like, it was an attachment to that, which I had no control over, right? You never do. And the more that I could really mature in this being okay, no matter what, because I knew I felt okay. I felt really just my child was okay, taken care of and maturing. And it's not so much of a child anymore. And I still feel like that, like in my most recent relationship, very much still a child that needs some healing. It taught me a lot. And that was a whole other experience recently that I had. And so to kind of like go back to the mother relationship, right? I think that that's something that it really showed me how as I really focused on this, that I am, this deeper conscious, this subconscious, like all the layers of who I am, and really doing this kind of work and self-exploration and discovery, and then really just being able to forgive my mother, really forgive her, and say, Mom, I love you no matter what. You did the best you could, and I love you so much, despite all the things, because there were a lot of things that I felt very unhappy about, and not at peace with. And I felt kind of like, oh gosh, I wish that didn't happen, or like, this is why, I had all these problems, and then it's like, no, I cannot blame anymore.
It's more attachment.
Yeah.
To put blame is attachment. And you're saying that as you healed your mother wounds, you were able to evolve in this relationship that you just had?
Yes.
Nice. That's interesting.
Yes.
No father wounds?
I had some because he abandoned us when I was young.
Okay, before the...
He became very brainwashed by a very extremist Christian group, and he needed to follow them.
But he came back?
No, we had to drop our things and follow him because my mother didn't want to divorce him. So she was like, we need to drop everything in Virginia and go to South Carolina. And so we had to leave. And she had a very, successful business in Virginia, and she had to give that up so we could go and be with my father. And so that was a big wound of mine, that he left us.
Whoa. Okay. So, and that's why you left New York, because you were born there in the Bronx.
I was born there, and then at 7 we moved to Bethesda, Maryland, because my father got a nice job at the Naval Hospital there. So we moved them there for that reason, for the job.
Okay. And then
we moved to Virginia because they found a nicer house there. And then the split was from Virginia to South Carolina.
I see, because in Virginia he was...
found this group.
I see. And that group migrated to South.
Some of them migrated to South Carolina, and he wanted to follow them.
Okay. And then South Carolina is the final resting place?
No, then South Carolina, I was really unhappy. And then I convinced my father to go up north to Pennsylvania. because I didn't like the South compared to living up north.
Okay, so that
So
was
we
the
moved.
end game. That Pennsylvania is
Pennsylvania,
where he rests.
where he rests.
I see. And then you left Pennsylvania to live back into New York,
New York.
and then to San Francisco.
And then I went back to Pennsylvania, and then I went to San Francisco.
Okay. And the wounds of the father and the abandonment, those have been healed through your practices?
Yeah. I feel that I mean, you know, I feel that it hasn't been fully healed, because I think that in my most recent relationship, I definitely felt that fear of abandonment coming up, and a fear of like letting go again. And even though I felt that the relationship wasn't serving me anymore, I chose to keep staying in that relationship. And that was a pattern that I'm noticing in myself when I lived since I've lived in San Francisco, with my previous job, you know, with the company that I helped to create, with my relationship with my boss that I had, and I really suffered. I suffered a lot because of this
father wound.
Yeah, the father wound and the mother wound, both.
So is the father wound like you want to stick with it the way that your family stuck with your father and moved with him with this Christian group? So it's kind of your way of not being abandoned by sticking with it? Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think it's more that I was afraid of being abandoned again. The fear of being alone. Being alone, not having a father, not having this male figure in my life. And, you know, there's all layers to it, right? And so I wanted his attention, and I really got it too. And yeah, so there's a lot of elements to it, right? So I think that when it comes to the kinds of relationships, whether it's professional, whether it's romantic, right, or intimate relationships, really give us an opportunity to be able to see ourselves and where we're at. It's a test. It can be a test.
Yeah, the good ones, I think. Like the best relationships, as painful as it is, gives you that look into yourself.
Yeah, you're saying if the relationship is the right relationship, or if it's a good relationship,
or it could be a bad relationship, but it's good for you, you know?
Yeah, like it could be bad in the sense that there are things that, you know, there's red flags, there's things that are not serving you, that you unhealthy attachments, right? Conflicting attachment styles, trauma bonding, you know, you name it. There's all kinds of things that can be happening in that relationship that is not good, quote unquote. But like you said, you know, the not good is actually the seed of awakening that's waiting to happen. And so I really can testify to that with my most recent relationship that I just ended. And I have to say that I could not have done it so easily or so quickly if it weren't for my teacher, Gangaji. And so that's really how I feel that it's the grace, by the grace of God, by the grace of Gangaji's presence in my life, and her transmission of truth is what made me wake up to the reality, this false reality that I was living in, that I felt like I couldn't get out of. I was completely stuck. You know, when you're in a relationship that, like you said, is not good, like you feel stuck in it and you can't get out of it. It's one of the most devastating feelings, where you feel like it's like feeding all your addictions and you can't break them. The bad habits, you can't break them. This fear of abandonment, you can't break it. Your anxious attachment style, you can't break free. The mother wound, because, you know, when you read the book, If the Buddha Dated, she talks about how when you find your mate or your partner, you're looking for your mother, actually, this mother figure in your life. So if you had a mother that abused you, it's like, and that person treats you poorly, it's almost like, oh, why does this feel so familiar, you know? And so there's so many elements to it. And if that person had trauma and you had trauma, and you read Eckhart's holy book, The New Earth, he talks about the pain body and how, you know, we are attracted to our pain bodies. And the pain body is basically unresolved trauma and negative emotions that get stored in our subconscious. And so in a way, we are attracted to that because it feeds each other, this pain body. And so there's so many elements to a relationship that it's really, really fascinating to think about and talk about. And I felt all of it, every aspect of everything that I had learned, yet I could not break free. I was like, yes, I see this. I see all of it, you know? And I was like, oh, wow. You know, I'd go on Instagram. I'd be like, oh, yes, this woman, she has so much wisdom and knowledge about anxious attachment and avoidant attachment. And this is exactly, I'm in this classic thing, but I can't get out of it. You know, it's like, oh, let's see a therapist. And it's like this never-ending rabbit hole of like, do this, do that. And the ultimate freedom I discovered was through my teacher, who said, stop. Just stop everything. And the moment that I stopped, Tiffany, was the true freedom. And which I could not understand what she meant by stop. I was like, oh, do I stop working? Do I stop, you know, everything I'm doing? It's like, no, it's a simple stopping of the mind. And what I gained from that was that I was able to stop for 1 second and just be free and know that no matter what, if I break up with him, I'm free. If I don't break up with him, I'm free. And I chose to be free and just be. And that was meaning I break up with him. And when I did, it was so empowering to be like, I choose me. I choose my path. I choose freedom. I choose peace. I choose true love. And that means I cannot be with you. And that's a whole other story why I could not be with him. But if I found myself stuck, I felt myself in an unhealthy attachment. I found myself feeding my bad habits. I found myself addicted to making sure he was okay and making sure that we are okay and obsessing about him. No. That is not okay. That is not following my peace. And I could not stop it, Tiffany. I could not. I was like, I have to die before this ends. That's how I felt. I was like I feel like, you know, when you feel like you have to cut your arm off before you can end that relationship? That's what I felt. I was like, I pray that he ends this relationship so I can stop suffering, because I could not end it. It's almost like who's gonna, you know, cut the cord first. It's almost like this game, you know? It's like, I can't.
It's a power dynamic.
Yeah, but then I was almost like, I just want him to just do it. But I couldn't. And then he had cancer, you know?
Jeez.
Anyway.
All in the span of 2 years.
Anyway, so thank you for listening. I feel like we've covered enough ground on things. And I'm grateful that we had this time to meet. It was definitely a divine meeting to be able to speak to you and to be able to share my story, because I've never done this before, and it's really, really kind of like a cleansing experience to be able to like share my story.
Yeah, I definitely think so too, and that's why I'm in this field of podcasting. It's a great medium for, almost similarly to what you said about the black hole. You speak it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You set it off into,
let it go.
You let it go, and the, you know, two birds, one stone. Folks can listen in and hopefully learn. I want to clear some things up that we talked about. Some of the things you said, you know, reminded me of, it really started to ring in on some of the experience and information I have with domestic abuse and domestic violence. The concept of the attachment, of wanting someone else to cut the cord, thinking that you obsessing over someone and thinking that you owe them something. All of those are attachments that we spoke of. And let's be mindful that they're important experiences because it helps you uncover, the wounds that you have.
Yes.
But stay informed on your resources of the practice of MAUM, the practice of Gangaji, and Eckhart Tolle. You spoke about so many resources that helped you move on from what, could be defined as a domestic entanglement, domestic abuse situation. So I hate calling people survivors because, there's just so many connotations around surviving, and there's a lot of positive and negative to those words. But thank you for sharing that and giving us some resources. I want you to just, before we end, what about this stop concept from Gangaji?
Yeah, you know what? I was actually going to say that's something that I feel was a missing piece of what my story has been, because, with the MAUM, this is something, it was a very kind of methodical, very kind of focused, hyper-focused way of clearing my mind, to stop the mind trap, to really break free of the prison of the mind, right? And it was so powerful and beneficial for me, right? To be able to clear myself of all of that weight I was carrying around, the weight of the world, just I'm so tired, I'm so weak, I don't know who I am, I'm so depressed, everything hurts all the time, what's wrong with me, I don't know what I want to do with my life, I hate myself, it was like that all the time. And when I was able to break free of all these things I was carrying around, it's no wonder I was feeling so crappy all the time, and that was such a freedom to have had that opportunity to sit and meditate, right? And the stopping is this notion that we are actually free. The stopping is that in every moment, it's not about sitting and meditating, it's in between that is the true meditation, is the moment-to-moment practice of meeting our emotions, our thoughts, our whatever is arising in each moment, in each breath of our life, right? That is the true meditation. How do we meet each moment? And the meditation, when we are sitting and meditating, whether it's MAUM, whether it's Zen Buddhism, whether it's different mindfulness practices, right, that people are doing now, transcendental meditation, all the different types of methods of meditation, those are all great. Yoga, right? I love yoga. And then Qigong, right? There's all different types of practices. And she's saying that the stopping is our choice to stop following the mind where it's leading, following the emotion where it's taking us, right? But to just really just be with it, and the more without the story. So when we're feeling a certain way, how do we cut? How do we stop following that which is taking us deeper into unnecessary suffering? So, for instance, the other day I was feeling really scared because I had broken up, and I was so scared of being alone. I felt very alone. I was so sad and lonely, and I missed my father. And I felt that, and I was like, oh, I don't want to feel this way. I want to make it go away. I don't want to feel sad. I don't want to feel... And I was thinking, what do I do? And I went into the woods, and I stuck my feet in the dirt, and I just sat there. I closed my eyes, and I just felt the fear. And this is what my teacher is saying. How can you just feel it? Stop for a moment and just feel what you're feeling. This is one thing, right? And just feel it without the thoughts. Just feel the energy of that fear. And what I realized was that the more that I can be fully present without this narrative going, the more that it just kind of, it just like dissolves. And then I was like, well, what's underneath that? And that's what I would ask myself, like, what's under that? And I'm like, oh, there's some sadness there. And then what's under the sadness? There's some, I don't know, just a little bit of anxiety, or what's under that. And I would feel the anxiety, I'd feel the sadness, and I just really, really feel it without whatever I was thinking about it, like what's causing, what's bringing it up. And then it just kind of dissolved more and more, and then into this space of like just really just being without it. It was gone, just disappeared. And I was like, oh, I don't feel, it's gone. It's like, I don't feel sad, I don't feel fearful, I just felt like so light and peaceful. And I was like, oh, this is what Kankachi's talking about. How can you just stop? And a lot of it is also in the moment. Sometimes you feel anger and you have to like act, right? And you're just like I want to do something with that anger, right? Or how can you just like stop that which is feeding the anger, right? And it's so hard. It's so hard. That's the big challenge that I'm facing, is that everybody has like different teachers have different styles of like, oh, what do you do with these emotions, right? How can you manage these emotions? And not that there's anything wrong with trying different styles, but what she's teaching me is that like these emotions are just like weather passing through. How do we just allow for it to pass through without trying to do something with it? Does that make sense? Trying to stop it, trying to like shove it down so it doesn't happen, right? Trying to control the situation, trying to like act it out because I'm like, oh, I gotta get it out, and that's what Thich Nhat Hanh was saying the other day. It's like, oh, you punch the pillow, you're actually like, you're not really doing anything, you're actually like, putting the anger somewhere else, right? And you're acting it out in a way, right? How can you just be?
Oh yeah, this came up the other day. I was talking about how like an earthquake hits and then it shakes and you move on. But if you continue to feed it, you're brewing a tsunami.
Yeah.
Hence that tsunami alert that we can talk about another time. It's on the list of things to talk about. It's ridiculous. But yeah, I love that. That's so full circle for me.
Yeah.
And it's so relative to something that happened recently.
It's a lot. Thank you so much. I feel that we covered a lot of things, and it's very exciting to be able to share. I'm grateful that I can talk about the two biggest moments of life, changing moments of my life, and to be able to share that with you and talk about the similarities and differences and how it's really been simplified in a way for me, but it's not simple. It's very difficult, actually. It's really challenging, but it's a challenge of a lifetime. So I'm excited to be able to talk to you and be able to see how it translates into these different topics of hoarding, the mother wound, and relationships. I feel that this is something that all of us struggle with to some degree, right?
Oh yeah, the human experience.
Yeah, and the shirt.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, we can talk about it. So let's end with, I take it that you're now a consigner here?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes, I am.
Can we talk about your consigned piece?
Yes. So it's actually...
bring it over.
Sure. Okay. Do you want me to... Oh, sorry. So it's a shirt.
Hang it. We can hang it here.
Yeah.
Hang it, and then you can reach for it. You can display it here.
So it's a T-shirt that my most recent the partner that I just ended the relationship with, he gave to me, and it was, he is a major T-shirt collector. He's probably got thousands of T-shirts, and a lot of them I really like, and it's interesting that he gave this to me not too long ago, before that relationship came to an end, and it everything that he gave me has meaning for me, has a place in my heart, and has a place for me, and I feel that it's part of the letting go process to be able to release it back out to the universe, and to be able to sort of not hold on, and like we've been talking about, to be able to give it back to somebody that may be able to enjoy it even more, and that I'm no longer, this kind of tied to the shirt in a way. I feel that the items, there's, like we talked about, there's this attachment and this idea of not wanting to be not being able to let it go and to be free that way, by being able to let go of these things, these possessions that we have, and especially the ones that are gifted to us or given to us. And I think that it's something that I feel that I'm excited to be able to have somebody else find use in it and to enjoy it. And I think also I wasn't really wearing it much, so I feel that I think it's a symbol of that.
Great. Yeah, like here at what we're doing, TheGitLit Presents is the podcast. It's a platform to amplify the raw voices of San Franciscans. We are powered by Raxavant, and Raxavant is a consignment platform. So this piece, this item, is that you've now detached from. It's still, in a sense, connected. You're detached, but you're not disconnected, because it'll go out into the marketplace, and when it sells, hopefully by somebody who wants to, have that connection with you and your artistry, and has been moved by what you shared, and they'll take it and enjoy it, turn it into, the energy will be transferred into something that they can enjoy, and as a consignor, you will receive a profit from this sale. So it's just a little practice that we do here, and to fund the artist, and to also detach and kind of change the energy of these material things that we have.
Yeah, create a new life for it, new story, right?
Yeah. And it's kind of fun to be able to trace back on the original story, but as somebody takes on this piece, it'll turn into something new.
Yeah, a new life of the shirt. So cool. I love it.
That's great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So excited. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh my God, of course. Thank you. This is divine timing. It's meant to be.
Thank you. Such an honor to be in your presence.
Likewise.
Thank
you. I mean, you're my acupuncturist, so
yes.
You help me so much.
So, yeah.
Yeah,
so
shout out to East-West Integrative.
Yeah.
I can cut that out if we can't.
Oh, but yeah, and my company, The Great Embrace.
The Great Embrace.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make sure to get that to the listeners to reach out when they need your help.
Yes.
You've
Thank
definitely
you.
changed my life. Like, we could talk about
Oh.
that later, but you
Oh.
unfroze my range of motion on my left side.
Oh, thank
And
you.
this was like a 3-year thing that the Western doctors just could not understand. And it just took one session with you, and I have the feeling back in my left arm for the most part, but it comes back.
Oh, that's so wonderful.
It freezes and unfreezes, but you did that. Thank you.
Oh, I'm grateful I could help you. Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome.
I think that was really fun.
I felt good.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's
like
a
we're
lot
in a different
of
world now.
rambling. I know, I'm like,
Feels like
"Ooh,
something
wow."
left us, and we're here in a different.
Yeah, I feel like
space.
we kind of moved into a different space.
It feels like
by
that.
all the talking and sharing and like because I was able to go through a lot of the things that I've always wanted to share, and like I kind of like, yeah, like my one patient was like, you should write a story